So again, thanks to everybody for joining in. Wanted to get as many people in the production community onto this call as possible so that we can lay out sort of what everything looks like moving forward. We've been getting a lot of calls the last couple of days and emails as things are starting to open back up. People are ready to get back to work and ready to shoot, and so we want to do everything we can to help you get back to work. So we scheduled a call yesterday with some of our municipalities and some of our local partners, and have been emailing them as well to see what they're going to need in order to approve permits moving forward. So as everybody knows, or if you don't know, our main job at the Film Commission is to help facilitate the productions and then provide communication. We're not a regulatory body. We're not any sort of law enforcement or enforcement agency whatsoever. We are just a communications hub to help everybody get their work done. We've got 24 municipalities within the county, including our county parks department, our county itself for anything that's county property. And though they are the ones who determine whether a permit is approved or not. So when you fill out that permit application, it comes to us, we collect all the information, we send it off to the appropriate body, and then they determine if they're going to approve a permit. So moving forward, it looks like everybody is opening for business. Things are starting to get rolling, but there are going to be some things that need to be done in order for permits to get approved. That being said as well, allow for a little more time now when you are submitting your permit applications too. As it is, we always ask for 5 business days. We know in a lot of cases it's less than that, and we're able to get things done in less time than that. But with people working from home and working remotely and sort of not being together, communication can take a little bit longer. So, allow for that extra time that you're going to need when submitting a permit to get those permits approved. I sent, I believe, in the email to everyone, and a lot of you may have already seen the Film Florida policies and procedures recommendations for productions moving forward. A lot of people also may have seen that, yes, Pamela is holding it up right there. A lot of people also may have seen that we are actually the first state in the country to put forth any sort of policies and procedures recommendations for filming. It's been covered on a lot of national press already, like Deadline and some other publications. So on our permit page now, when you go to apply for a permit, right at the top there, and before you apply, it says, new on May 1st, upon submission of an application, productions acknowledge that they have read and will implement these recommendations for clean and healthy sets to the best of their ability. So I know a lot of it are, people are going to have a lot of questions about these policies and procedures because there's a lot on there, and some of them, frankly, aren't really possible on smaller productions or productions without a large budget. So a lot of what that's going to boil down to is what are you doing to make your cast and crew comfortable with the work environment that you're putting them in. As far as our cities and municipalities go, they will be looking at the information that you put on your permits when you submit them, and social distancing guidelines are still in place. So groups of 10 or less, and maintaining that 6-foot spread essentially. So what I'll say moving forward for the time being, any productions that need a permit that are shooting on any sort of public property, keep to 10 or less people right now. We don't know how much longer that's gonna go, but that is what the municipalities are going to be looking at, is to see if you have 10 or less people. Now, if you do have a larger shoot and you've got more than 10 people, you're going to have to keep those groups separated. 10 people here, 10 people in another section, however you may do it. I believe on the Film Florida recommendations, there is a lot of stuff on there about how to separate larger groups within pods and everything. So again, I'm not going to go step by step through that Film Florida thing. Everybody can read that themselves, and they'll know, kind of what's on there. A big question is, of course, insurance. From talking to our municipality partners, they're not asking for or looking at any changes to the insurance requirements. One of the big things regarding insurance and everything that I've seen and people that I've talked to is that more than likely, I'll say probably 99.999%, your insurance carriers will not cover any illnesses on any productions moving forward. So what a lot of productions are going to need to do, and you all should do, is to have waivers for every person that works on your production to sign, stating that they are aware of the the inherent risks on working around people, essentially. It's not going to be our job to provide you with those waivers. Each of your individual companies or people have your own attorneys or processes for getting your paperwork in order. So it'll be up to you to provide your people with that paperwork and those waivers. And that's really something to protect yourselves more than anything else. I'm still been trying to put a call together with my county attorney to see if there's anything on our level. Haven't been able to reach him in the last couple of days. He's been a little bit busy. So if I get any different information from our county attorney on the whole waiver situation or anything like that, we'll kind of move forward from there. All that being said, really this is going to be a learning experience for everybody, and a lot of this is going to be a case-by-case basis. Every production is different. Every permit is completely different, and so every time we get one of these and we're submitting it off to a city, we're going to be learning and figuring out what we can and can't do on each one of those. So everybody's going to have to be kind of a little patient as we try and move forward with all of that. And again, a lot of us don't know when things are going to change or how they're going to change as restrictions are eased. But for the time being, that's kind of the world that we live in. Now, I know a lot of you are very responsible production people and would never do anything wrong. And we trust all of you implicitly. But that being said, our municipalities have asked us that when production gets started, that Lisa and Declan and I from the Film Commission just kind of show up and spot check on productions and make sure that you guys are sort of following guidelines and policies, procedures the best that you can. Again, we're not law enforcement and we're not any sort of regulatory body, but they're going to be asking us to do this so that we can report back to them. And if things aren't going well on one production, it's very, very unlikely that, say, whoever, St. Pete or Clearwater, whoever it might be, would approve your next permit if you're not doing things right on the first one. So all that being said, there's a lot of other stuff out there depending on the scale of productions that you are doing with the unions, SAG and IATSE and everybody else. People may have seen yesterday, there was an article on Deadline about how SAG talked about things will not go back to normal until there's a vaccine that's available, and SAG is actually limiting what a lot of their actors can and can't do in regards to travel and other things. So there's a whole complicated process involving the unions and what those unions are going to allow and do. And that includes those waivers as well, because if the waiver runs counter to something that SAG or IATSE has in their contracts that you sign when you're doing projects, then so I think for the time being, what we're going to end up seeing is a lot of non-union productions happening in Florida, which happen in Florida anyways because we are a right to work state. But any of you that are going to be working on union productions and doing stuff with unions need to be very cognizant of communicating with those unions and asking them, what their policies and procedures are, what their restrictions are in regard to working with all those union people as well. So anybody that has questions, please start typing in there, or if you want to say something, do the little clap thing and I'll start unmuting people. And I've got a few people waiting here. I'm going to admit in real quick. So we'll start unmuting people so that they can, you all can ask questions essentially. For those who that just joined us, I've been kind of going on about a few different things here, but this whole thing is being recorded and we're going to post this to our Facebook and YouTube, and we will send this out in our email newsletter as well, so that anyone that missed it will have an opportunity to watch all of this again if you so choose to watch me ramble on for a few minutes, basically. So questions? Anybody typing any questions here or have any questions? I'm sorry, who's that?
Elaine, I have.
Hey, Elaine, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Tony?
Good, thanks.
Thank you for this call, and thank you for everybody. Of course, we're all chomping at the bit to figure out how we're going to do all this. My question is, how, in any respect, can the county help. For example, I figure on a normal 20-day feature, which is a lower budget feature, it's going to cost probably 3 additional days of filming, just using the hour to hour and a half every morning. Then on top of it, we can only have 2 people in a passenger van. So if we ever have to shuttle our crew from parking to set or to lunch, we're dead in the water. That's an extra week of shooting. I could think of a lot of ways we can utilize help. Like I figure for my next film, I'm going to need probably 1,500 masks. I don't know where to get them.
Okay.
Wash stations. I don't know, so maybe there's a city bus we can use instead of vans, if we could think outside the box and see how we might be able to get some county support. Otherwise, we're looking at like an extra $100,000 minimum.
Yeah. So as far as that goes, we can absolutely reach out to our contacts and do whatever we can to help find all of those supplies that you're going to need, whether it's the wash stations, whether it's the masks. There are a lot of sporting events that do happen in the area and things like 5K races and stuff like that. And so there always are companies that have those wash stations for a lot of the large events, the big music festivals and things like that happen in, Vinoy Park and St. Pete. So we can absolutely, help put together those resources to make sure that you guys have anything that you need. And of course, whether it's the film productions, any additional monies that you're spending, those are of course all still going to be eligible to get the 10% back from our incentive program that we have as well. And I think, again, a big thing on the, limit 2 people per vehicle, that kind of thing is, again, those are all recommendations, and it's all recommended that you follow the recommendations. But a lot of it is going to boil down to what are your cast and crew comfortable with. You may have some crew and some cast that are more comfortable than, in a situation than others are. And you're going to have to really communicate and talk with all of them and see what people are willing to do or willing to not do when it comes to, communication or working together. As we know, on a film set, it's really hard for everybody to be 6 feet apart because that's just not the nature of how things work. So, it's going to be a lot of back and forth and a lot of communication with people to figure out, again, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, what people are willing to do and what they're not willing to do, and kind of working, within the, the best of their ability. I do have a question here, Pete. Pete, do you have a question that you want to ask? You can unmute yourself and ask away.
Question is, obviously, we need to have our lawyers write waivers so crew members can hold us liable if they show up on set, which you mentioned, but do we have to have a separate waiver for the locations? So if we rent a restaurant, a pizzeria, a studio, do we have to have a separate waiver that also those locations are not also entitled to get sued or subject?
Yeah, so I think now when you start talking about private locations, this is going to be something new that gets worked into those location agreements. Everyone kind of has their standard location agreements that they've used in the past. Well, there's going to be a brand new element to the, to that, and I think each individual private location is going to be different depending on what they want. So you can have your attorneys work up, those additional things for the location agreements, but be flexible and be ready to change those depending on what a location may want. A location may require you to completely, sanitize everything when you're done at a location and leave, or to pay for their people to, completely sanitize it when they're gone. So that's, think of those additional costs they're going to have to be included, and those additional elements, like that, essentially.
No, that's a good point. Thank you.
Questions from anybody else? I think Sarah Ferdinand, she has a question.
Yeah, hi. This is Sarah Ferdinand. I was just wondering, with the health waivers, are you going to now be requiring like a proof of waiver be submitted with our COIs when we're applying for a permit at all?
Yeah, that's a good question, and something we actually talked about yesterday as well. So what we'll be looking for is, you're not going to, if you've got 10 people on a project, we're not going to require you to submit every single one of those signed waivers from those 10 people, but you should submit the waiver that you're going to be using so that we can supply that to whatever municipality we're sending the insurance off with as well, and say, hey, not only, here's their insurance, but here is also the waiver that they're having everybody that works on the project sign as well. And anything that we can do to make the cities and municipalities more comfortable to approve a permit is better. So, more information, more documentation is always better than less. Joe.
Hey, what's up, Tony? How you doing, buddy?
Good, man.
Hey, yeah. So how long do you feel that this kind of protocol is going to be in effect? For here on out, or are we going to be able to eventually? Things are just going to go back to normal, I imagine, because we can't live. I don't imagine everyone adhering to this kind of protocol for the next forever.
Yeah. Well, if I had the answer.
I mean, once they find the vaccine and stuff, and yeah, well, I mean, obviously, so we're looking at 18 months, probably 2 years.
Yeah, I think again, that's where I refer back to what's the comfort level of your cast and your crew. Again, so even on a state by state basis, it's going to be different. Florida, we're obviously opening up a lot sooner with stuff than California is. So in July or August, does the governor say, you don't need to socially distance anymore? You don't have to do 6 feet. That 10 people can now be 50 people. Whatever that might be. It's going to be a play it by ear scenario as those things roll out and as those changes are made. But if I could predict overall, I'd be putting some money down somewhere and trying to make a fortune here. But I don't, I know as much as you guys do on that. Questions? Anyone else? We've got one person to add in here, it looks like.
I have another question.
Yes.
On public locations,
Mhm.
county-run locations, we have to obviously have everything sanitized for our shooting. Is there something that the location itself will be responsible to do at night, or is it just quickly we have to sanitize from top to bottom?
I think it depends on whatever location you're talking about. So, most of the locations that we're permitting are going to be some sort of exterior location, whether it's a beach or a county park or a sports field or whatever it might be. So anything that you think that is outside, if you're using a picnic table outside somewhere, I would think that's up to the production to sanitize that themselves before they get started. I don't think there's any way to have county park employees going around constantly sanitizing exterior things. I'm trying to think of an interior location that's a county or city owned. As far as that goes, I know all of the county and city locations will be sanitizing on a regular basis, but I would put the onus back on the production to make sure that you have that designated PA or that designated person that's their job to be constantly sanitizing while the production is happening.
Okay.
Other questions from anybody? Yes, no. I thought it would be inundated. I'm glad we don't have a bazillion questions, but I know so much of it is we just don't know a lot right now, and a lot of it's going to be case by case.
So Tony, this is for right now for production. So you're saying you're opening up permitting today for small shoots for 10 people or less?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, you want to start shooting something immediately, start filling out your permit applications right away. And granted, this is the beginning of May. And so, Elaine, you're talking about, let's say you have a feature film. Obviously, it's not coming next week. You would be talking, middle of June, probably at this point, at the earliest, if not end of June. Well, as things are moving forward, by the beginning of June, the governor could say, now it's, 25 people, or now it's 50 people instead of 10. And so as those changes occur, then those same changes will trickle down to what applies to applying for a permit as well.
Okay. Because in my head, I'm thinking about changing each 10 group. Okay, one leaves, another comes, which isn't the purpose of this.
Well, and like Elaine, I'll use for example, when you were shooting, let's say, Love in the Sun, the Hallmark film at Felipe Park in Safety Harbor. You had one of the picnic areas that was all kind of reserved for your people. Let's say you had to take that picnic area and you had to split it up into groups of 10. And maybe now instead of having one big picnic area, you need 2 or 3 of those covered picnic areas to be able to spread out your team. And, you'll have to have, there's one group waiting at picnic area number 2 and another group at picnic area 3, and you're rotating into picnic area 1 for meals. I think that's just, finding ways to spread people out and kind of move it around like that is going to be what's necessary for the time being. And again, as that number grows, as they change the number of people that can be in one spot together, that'll change as well.
Okay. Makes sense.
All right. Anybody else? Questions? Comments?
Comments are just yikes.
No, I know, and I know that's the big thing. Everybody's looking at that list from Film Florida and be like, a typical one of our production companies here that's shooting branded content, or you're shooting a commercial or something else. So like, I can't afford to do any of this, or maybe not any of it, but and some of it again is just, it's really common sense for the most part. Clean stuff, tell people to wash their hands, everybody not stand so close together, wear masks. I know. So a lot of production has been happening in private locations already. So, when you're on private property, again, those recommendations are still in place, but it's much more controllable. And, you look at a lot of the big Hollywood studios, a lot of what they're talking about is shooting everything in sound stages right now and not going on location at all, because you just can't control things as much when you're on location. And there's no way for, a large Hollywood production to, move 100 people around the scale of the productions that they're doing.
One thing we should, and I just spoke with a producer in LA who said what the studios and what other productions are doing is housing the entire crew near that studio where they're shooting, so they could control the environment they go home to. Yeah,
and I've read a lot of that as well. In a lot of cases, I don't know how realistic that is, because unless you house the entire cast and crew in one hotel for 2 weeks, and then everybody moves back and forth to set and they don't interact with anybody else, people go home to their families, people go to the grocery stores, especially if you're a local working as a local. It'd just be too cost prohibitive for most productions to put people up, which is again why I say so much of it is going to boil down to what's the comfort level of your cast and crew. You want them to be comfortable. You don't want to be that production that people start complaining on, how unsafe of an environment it is and how they weren't made to feel like precautions were taken.
Makes sense.
And we did have a question from Cody asking about a link to the documentation of the SAG guidelines. I think just going to SAG's website, they should have everything listed there. I don't have it in front of me or anything, but SAG's website should have everything. Or your local SAG rep for Florida, David Fazekas, I believe. I think he's down in Miami now, not Orlando anymore. Call your SAG rep. We've got one here in Florida, or if you're in California or wherever else, and just talk to them. They'll tell you exactly how things are moving forward. Melissa, you've got a question about a scripted safety announcement. Can you want to unmute yourself and you can ask that question?
I can, but there's lawn services going on, so hopefully.
Oh, okay.
Well, it just popped into my mind because sometimes on set there are safety announcements, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's one at the first day of the shoot and then never again. So it was just an idea that I don't know if it's something that the Film Commission could do or work with Film Florida on, but maybe it would be comfortable for everybody to know that there was this standard agreed upon kind of safety announcement that you could do. Something short, a few sentences, and yeah, I don't know, that could be comforting maybe to people, especially.
Yeah, I imagine we can work with Film Florida and probably come up with something. But again, at the same time, every production is so different. A safety announcement on a project where you've got stunts and things happening is going to
Sure.
be different from something else. And I know we're referring to basically the, as far as, sanitizing
Yeah.
COVID-19 related safety environment. But I think for the most part, people are going to have to be responsible for doing that themselves. And I would just use that Film Florida document as a basis for the safety announcement, basically. And Jonathan Chambers shared with everybody the link for SAG there. And as Steve said, yes, that should be the AD's job, and whoever the AD is need to be responsible for that, obviously on a daily basis, not just at the beginning of the shoot and then forget for the next 10 days.
Come in.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts for anyone? And again, this for anybody that missed anything, we're going to put this recording up on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and send the link out in an email as well.
I think this is great.
Well, now is your opportunity, everybody, but not speak now or forever hold your peace, if this was a wedding. Say, if there's anything you want to say to the rest of the production community locally, anything anybody wants to say, now's the time. It's not very often we get 45 of us all in one place at one time to be able to talk. So now's the time to be able to say anything to anybody else that you'd like to as well. Within reason, of course, what I'm saying. In a nice way.
Miss y'all.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
The only thing I would like to say is, since we're coming out of this, and I know everybody is, for lack of words, desperate just to get back on the set and to start working again and just making money. One thing I would hope all of us as a community can do, and we've been talking individually to other production companies, is be careful on, if everyone can do this, I know it's very difficult to do first hearing, is be careful on, let's not undercut each other. Let's not do what happened in 2008 where our rates got slashed, where production costs got slashed. And all of a sudden agencies and companies were like, oh, we can do this for cheaper. We can do this for cheaper because now people are figuring out how to do it for that price. And what that causes, and you know this, and everybody in Hillsborough County and rest of Florida know, is what it does is eventually the guys who are doing productions for less money, they have there's a very minimal chance that they're going to survive as a production company. Like, it may work for 6 months, it may work for a year, but eventually when you work paycheck for paycheck because you are taking less money to do a production where you were making more the previous year, eventually you're going to actually fade away. And I don't want to see that happen to small production companies. And so that's what the one thing I've been talking to everyone privately over the phone or video chat is, be careful if you start taking less money and then less money, because companies and agencies, then all of a sudden that becomes normal. And then all of a sudden all of our small production companies go out of business because you can't do paycheck for paycheck. And then if you have 6 months of no work, guess what? You don't have any money to support the company anymore. And then all the freelancers that utilize you for money to hire them as art directors and DPs, they start making no money either. So that's my one advice. Me and you have talked about that offline before. So that's my word, and that's all I'm going to have to say.
No, yeah, that's a good point. It is a good point, and it's tough, and hopefully everybody will work together and do the best that they can to maintain the industry at a good high standard and a high level. And I've had a couple people in the comments here mention as well that yes, people are starting to do the temperature taking now. I don't know how much one of those little scanners cost, but they can't be that much. The little thermometers that just scan the forehead, and in 2 seconds you have a temperature. So that's should be a cheap addition that everybody can add to their toolkits for for set medics, of course. If you've got to pay an extra whatever it might be that day rate is to have a medic on set every day, it would definitely be worth that extra expense. And again, it would make your clients probably feel a lot more comfortable if you said, you know, hey, moving forward, you know, we're going to take everybody's temperature. We're going to have a set medic there. It would certainly make the municipalities and the cities more comfortable when they're approving permits to see that you are, you know, doing those things and implementing those things as well. Manatee Search and Rescue is working to offer very competitive rates for medics on set. Declan let everybody know, which is great. And then, yeah, there may be some guidelines from the Associated Motion Picture and Television safety bulletin for call sheets as well. So yeah, any more thoughts or comments or anything from anyone? Steve is asking if dismissing a crew member because of a high temperature is legal. Well, it may not. You know, that's a question for your for your employment attorney. Probably not that all of us have employment attorneys, but these are questions you need to answer ahead of time. I think yes, like Tiffany said, consult your lawyer, and I think that's part of where maybe that waiver comes into place too. It's something that would go on that waiver is. You know, you're willing to, you know, work on the set, and that if you do come to set and it's determined that, you know, you've got a high temperature, you know, you're not going to be able to work that day. Again, that's a case-by-case basis that everybody's going to have to address individually with their productions, and definitely whoever's putting together your waivers or your production agreements or anything, definitely talk to a lawyer about that. And there are a few good lawyers, entertainment attorneys around, but I think even just doesn't have to be an entertainment attorney probably to answer that question.
Prior to this COVID-19, in the past, I used to be allowed to send home any crew member or actor if they were sick and it seemed deemed contagious. And it was perfectly legal because I had to protect my crew. So I don't know if the same will still hold through, but it seems like it should.
Yeah, yeah, and then a couple of other good points there. That on a 1 or 2 day production, if somebody has a temperature, how do you cover that person? The time is short. I think part of that is, you know, you need to have a stable of people to contact and have backups in place in case somebody does fall out. I don't think it'd be any different than if, you know, somebody had an accident and broke their leg or something. That person still needs to be replaced. What would you do if there was a different type of an accident that someone wasn't able to work, or you know they had some issue with their family that they weren't able to come into work the next day or whatever? You always have to have, you know, backups in place. And so I think this is just you know, another one of those scenarios where make sure you've got your backup people in place that you've communicated with in advance, that hey, you know, right now I don't need you, but if something happens, I might need you tomorrow. Are you available? Again, just be prepared as much as possible. And then Joe, yes, standing in the hot Florida sun, or if you've got a sunburn, I don't know, maybe you come across as hotter than normal. And that's where the set medic would then would probably be their job to do an evaluation on if that person, you know, how that person was fit for work or not. Again, so much of this is going to be case by case, and we're going to all be learning as we go. Any other questions? Joe, clapping, raising your hand there.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that temperature reading. I only know this because my wife is running the front lines of St. Anthony's right now, running temperature checks. And the biggest issue they're having is that you're coming in out of the heat, right? So your temperature always reads 2 or 3 degrees or 5 degrees above whatever it's supposed to be. So you come in, read 102, you got to wait 15 minutes and then read it again. Their temperature could actually be 7.9.
Yeah, and I think that's part of, that's going to be part of your policies and procedures there.
Temperatures, I don't think it'll work, man. Is reading temperatures on sets, I don't think that'll work because you're getting grips who are jumping in out of a grip truck all day. They're going to be hot as hell, and those temperature readings aren't going to be right. So, I mean, that's the only problem I see there with trying to incorporate some sort of process where you read people's temperature coming in. It's going to change.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. I think, again, that's where, you know, you have to default back to, having a medical professional that can
You're
determine.
saying that read coming in and then,
Yeah, they get read a couple times. They get read at the door.
Yep.
They get read as soon as they get to their floor, and then somebody will randomly check them for shift. But
Yeah, I think the big thing, just to nip this bud, just consult a medical professional. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what it comes down to. None of us, unless we have a nursing license or anything like that, should be making those calls. It should be somebody who is licensed and definitely knows what they're doing to make those calls.
Yeah, you're not going to have a PA running temperatures and telling people whether they can work or not.
No, I agree. We should have a medical on set, just as if we're doing these stunts, we have a medical on set. So we maybe, if you really want to be really fail-proof and safe, that could be a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
again, it's a lot of this is going to be case by case, and it's going to be, it's the comfort level of your, of your cast and crew. We're not going to claim to have all the answers, right now. That's for sure. Again, a lot of us are going to learn. And I think that's another thing to say is, as we do get out there and start, learning some things that are working, things that are not working, please share that with the rest of the production community so that the rest of us, can be aware of any issues and things that are popping up as we move forward. Anything else? Yes, no? Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have any other comments or questions, last call for, now is your opportunity to talk to the 45 local production professionals and some out of town ones. Tiffany, hello in Los Angeles. All right, good. Well, again, thank you everybody for taking the time to join in here. We are going to make this video available on our social channels, and we'll send it out to everybody as well so that you can share with anyone that may not have gotten it. And let's, do the best we can, get everybody back to work. We're excited to be accepting permit applications, waiting for that first one to come in so that we can examine it and get it out there and see what our municipalities say. So thanks again, everybody. Looking forward to everybody getting back to work and getting through everything. And I feel like Hill Street Blues when I say stay safe out there.